Vince McMahon is done with WWE. It's all but confirmed at this point. The moment the allegations emerged earlier this year, TKO started to distance themselves from McMahon, and he was stepping down completely soon enough. Since the time he has been removed, WWE has been quick to erase any trace of him from their programming. The new era of WWE has also been named the Paul Levesque era, signaling that Vince is well and truly gone. And now it's Triple H in charge of the creative department in WWE. With that being the case, what about Vince McMahon? As a partial owner of TKO, the former WWE boss has been dumping his shares in the market like there's no tomorrow. The fact is that he is also exiting the company at breakneck speed and seems to be creating a war chest while doing so. He has sold millions of shares, and now it might not be too long. It was just reported that he had put up all the shares that he had in WWE for sale. As a result, when they are sold, he will have zero involvement in the company and will be exiting as an owner. Fans have been wondering about what's next for him, and there seems to be a few signs that the former WWE boss might consider going to AEW. But what would happen if he goes there? Let's take a look at the potential changes to AEW and WWE if that would occur as a result. There are few people who are quicker to take a shot at WWE than Tony Khan. If an opportunity presents itself, he's going to take it, and for once, he's going to have Vince McMahon on his side. If the former WWE chairman appears on AEW, it certainly won't only be as a part of the backstage scene. He'll be a big attraction for the company to step in front of fans, and that's what McMahon would want to do to himself, as a finger to WWE and the board for having removed him so thoroughly. Long back in 2002, Vince McMahon introduced his opponent from the Monday Night Wars, Eric Bischoff, into Raw as the general manager. It was a moment which fans had never seen coming, and it was thought to be one of the biggest in WWE history. Truthfully, it would shape how the next 4 to 5 years would go for WWE. Similarly, Tony Khan would make sure to hug Vince McMahon and shake his hand in public to ensure that the message was sent to Triple H and Stephanie that their father-in-law and father was working for their competition now that he had been cast out of control of the company he had created. It's also likely that he would be entering a position of power where he'd get to book what happened in AEW as well, as without that, he'd be unlikely to ever appear in the rival company. One of the biggest issues with AEW recently is that there has been a lack of stories, and TV quality has suffered as a result. While the matches are top-notch, the fact that there are few regularly occurring stories means that fans rarely have a reason to come back to the show week after week, even if one week's show impressed them. As a result, fans have been going down. On top of that, there have been too many poor choices made in management. Vince McMahon, while far from the most stable human being, is also someone who knows how to book a show. It's likely that he would immediately focus on increasing storylines, be they good or bad, which would ensure that there was better fan retention than there currently is. Another change that he would immediately result in is that he would see the fans tuning in more simply to see what McMahon was going to do one week to the next. The criticism of his booking alone would have more fans tuning in and driving interest to see what a Vince McMahon outside WWE would mean. Along with this, though, there would be a partial loss of the core fan base. There's a certain section of fans in AEW who, understandably, hate Vince McMahon and everything that he stands for. Bringing him into the company would be seen as a huge betrayal, and one that they would not take lightly. It would result in some of those core fans leaving or stop watching AEW. At the same time, though, the increased interest would mean that total fan numbers would still likely go up. There's one man that cannot stand what happened with Vince McMahon when he was in WWE, and that's Jon Moxley. The man has made his contempt for the former WWE boss plain in his book. The ideas that he was given and how they were executed were some of the things that he absolutely hated. While he has been the big name in AEW since the conception of the company, he would likely immediately leave as a result. He would not be alone in this, as there are quite a few AEW stars who are not on good terms with Vince McMahon anymore, such as Sasha Banks and several other ex-WWE stars. However, top names like Edge and Daniel Bryan would not be affected, as they have somehow maintained a good relationship with him even when they were leaving the brand. One of the first things that Vince would want to introduce to AEW is something that he has had in WWE for a long time: 12 events in 12 months. Pay-per-views were the bread and butter of WWE and have always done well for the company. He would immediately introduce the concept of regular events in AEW, something that the company still does not have. While they'd have difficulty in keeping this going with the interest issues, the fact that Vince McMahon was the one making the change would have an effect. Vince McMahon is many things, but he is not someone who lets his wrestlers perform moves that could injure them. For him, the safety of the wrestlers takes priority, as he sees them as an investment that he is losing out on every time they hurt themselves. As a result, it's something that he would change in AEW too. In AEW, wrestlers are prone to taking a lot more risks than they do in WWE. They push the limits and go to hardcore levels, which has resulted in several injuries and the wrestlers getting badly punished for the risks they take. It's something that Vince would want to change immediately, although the stars are not likely to react positively to that update. In AEW, one of the problems has been that traditional fans can't see the wrestlers as actual stars. Stars like Darby Allin, Orange Cassidy, and popular AEW stars who fans love would end up suffering for this. The fact that Vince McMahon likes big, meaty men in his wrestling is not a fact that anyone is unaware of. The stars like Brian Cage, Wardlow, Lance Archer, and others would get a lot more priority in this new AEW than the stars who are currently popular. Whether true or not, AEW boasts that they have the best tag team division in the world. Vince McMahon hates tag teams. As a result, there would be a lot of splits, and those tag teams that can't really break up would suffer as they would head into obscurity. The Young Bucks and FTR especially would likely suffer, given all the shots that they've taken at Vince McMahon over the years and the dislike that he has for them. A complete clean out of the division would end up leaving them with nothing. They would have none of the success, and the trios titles too would suffer as a result. For some reason, Vince McMahon has always prided himself on doing what his wrestlers need, and that would be to change their nicknames. Several wrestlers have gone through name changes when Vince was in charge, with Doudrop being an iconically stupid one. More such could be expected. Even the production would change, as Vince does not like the dark and gloomy setting that is often seen in AEW, and would brighten it up with colors. AEW might end up getting an NXT-like revamp to AEW 2.0. While old WWE stars going to AEW is common, it's likely that these stars would get a lot more power within the company if Vince McMahon was the one booking the show. The stars like Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair would show up frequently. Big Show might get a last outing, as would other stars who are past their heyday. There would also be a chance of Goldberg finally getting the retirement match that he wanted, given that the star has always had a good relationship with Vince McMahon. With Brock Lesnar out of the picture in WWE at this time, although he's still in the company's books, Vince would immediately try to bring him to AEW. If he went to the company, the entire wrestling landscape would change too with him. He'd likely get a world title immediately, and all other competitors who have been built up by AEW over the years would get the shaft and end up getting squashed by him in a typical move. In the long term, Vince McMahon's involvement with AEW could lead to a reshaping of the professional wrestling landscape. It could usher in a new golden age of wrestling characterized by innovation, heightened competition, and a fusion of different wrestling philosophies. For McMahon, this move could be seen as a bold attempt to redefine his legacy outside the empire he built with WWE. It would be an opportunity to prove that his success wasn't confined to one organization and that his impact on the industry transcends any single brand. He would try to showcase himself as being much bigger than WWE, and that itself would be something that changed. WWE would also want to lock down their roster to longer contracts, as while most of them are very happy with Triple H in charge, several would probably still share a good relationship with Vince McMahon and want to go over there. Longer contracts would result, and this could be what helps AEW crack 1 million viewers regularly too. Whatever connections that WWE may have to Vince McMahon even now, that would be something that would change, and any connections with him would be removed. Overall, Vince McMahon going to AEW is something that would change the wrestling world. There are still several businesses who would work with the company because of his name despite the scandals surrounding him. The fact would be that it would be a huge short-term boost to the company and one that they'd try to capitalize on to make it a long-term one as well. However, unless Vince's time in the company was a short one, AEW would likely end up suffering and failing later the longer the former WWE chairman remained. And this was What If Vince McMahon Went to AEW. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all later.